What up? What up? Man, I'm excited to be back today, guys. I missed you guys last week. I did. I missed doing this last week. Um, admittedly, I didn't miss it much on Thursday whenever I was eating and sleeping all day. But in the days leading up to that, I missed it. I missed the studying specifically for this. I missed the anticipation and the practice, leading up to recording the video. I missed all that. I enjoy doing this. I hope you guys, continue to enjoy it, continue to support it. So again, thank you guys. Again, hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving as much as I did. Also, apologies for being a little bit more incognito today. We're at that time of the year where, it's cool enough in the house. It's like a nice little 67, 68 in the house right now, feeling pretty good. So cool enough to where I don't, need to run the air, but it's also not cold enough to where I don't need to run the heat. So like just lounging around in a hoodie and some basketball shorts is like the perfect thing to do. And if you guys know me, the majority of the time that I have on a hoodie, I have the hood on as well, like a cool like 85, 90% of the time. If I want to buy an article of clothing that wasn't a hoodie, that was warm, I would buy a sweatshirt. I'm not trying to have the hood just flapping up and down my back all day while I'm walking around. And as I sit in my trusty recliner back here, like having the hood like pressed up against the upper part of my back, like creating that little bit of unevenness between my upper back and my middle back is like the most uncomfortable thing in the world for me because I'm weird. So, again, if you can't see my entire face or anything like that today, you think I'm trying to hide anything. I'm not. Just trying to stay warm out here and save some money on my power bill. Today we're starting off two-part series. Part one starting off today about hating the sin and loving the sinner. Probably one of the most cliche phrases out there in Christianity today. I'll admit it to you guys, like most cliche Christian things, I hate this. However, I want to address it today because unfortunately it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Every once in a while I'll be scrolling up and down the timeline and I'll be doing good, a couple of funny memes there, a couple of funny dog pictures there, and then boom, we got Jesus is still in charge, hate the sin, love the sinner, and or thoughts and prayer. So I'm just like, here we go again. The world would be a much better place, especially the social media world, if we could just do away with these, like find something new. Not saying that these three things are untrue by any stretch of the imagination. I just feel like we have a hard time believing and practicing these things. And that, I feel like, these three phrases in general, especially, are just whitewashed, superficial responses to issues we have today that really lack substance to them. So what I want to do today, I want to give a little bit of substance to this hate the sin and loving the sinner. I feel as Christians, one thing we struggle is to maintain. I've been trying to find the right word for this like all day, is to maintain, we'll just go with balance, to maintain the balance between hating the sin and loving the sinner. I feel like we either hate the sin and do not show nearly as much grace and love to the sinner, even if we disagree with their lifestyle, or, we love the sinner and have become so accepting and sensitive and fearful of speaking out that we also, become compliant and accepting of folks' sinful habits and lifestyles as well. So today we're going to talk about the hate the sin part, and why I think it's important more so than ever, for us Christians still to uphold a standard of godliness in our lives and also, of course, to help others do the same. So truthfully, the hate the sin part, the first part of this phrase, is probably more difficult to me than the love part. That's one of the reasons why I want to start, with the hate the sin part today. Also, because, it's hate the sin, love the sinner. Hate the sin is usually said first. So like my OCD is like, you have to say the hate the sin part first. Like you have to address that first. You can't go backwards. So for the sake of my mental health, we're going to start with hate the sin, and then love the sinner next week. And like I said, hate the sin is probably a little bit more difficult for me to address nowadays than the love part. It didn't always used to be like this for me, though. As you guys have heard a million times by now in these videos, I'll say it again. I grew up in church. I've been around Christians and Christianity my entire life. I grew up thinking, however, that Christianity was pretty much a checklist of things that we don't do. We don't get tatted up. We don't get piercings. We don't wear jeans or hats to church. We don't listen to secular music. We don't, hang out with a member of the opposite sex because we're going to end up inevitably having sex and getting pregnant out of wedlock. And if you have a beer, you're the devil. And I genuinely believed some of this growing up. The point is, as kind of flamboyant and exaggerating as that was, I was taught to hate things, whether they be inherently sinful things or not, from a young age. And to some extent, I'm not going to completely discredit that. To some extent, I'm very thankful for that. I used to struggle sharing my testimony with people. Like, I don't really have much of a rags to riches testimony, for a lack of a better phrase, as you would say. My testimony could be kind of boring to somebody who's really genuinely been through the mud and came out of it, on the other side. But then somebody told me one time, they said, part of your testimony is sharing the grace that God has had for you that has kept you from making a lot of mistakes that other people have. And that really struck a chord with me, and I really appreciated that. I mean, somebody showed me that there was still value in the testimony that I have. So again, I've learned, over the course of time, over this walk with the Lord, to be more appreciative of growing up, a little bit more strict, or with that standard of clean living, I guess you would say. Apologies for all the air quotes there. Weird flex incoming here. I don't drink at all, as most people know. I've never had an alcoholic beverage in my entire life. Never have, never will. It's funny, as I was, dating growing up, kind of in my early and mid 20s, I would talk to girls about it, and they would be like, "Oh my God, like, that's so nice. Like, you're such a good guy. Like, you don't drink, or like you don't get drunk, and like you're so mature." And I'm like, no, listen, like, it's deeper than that. Like, I've never literally had an alcoholic drink in my entire life. Like, I don't go to alcohol-based establishments. Like, that's not for me at all. Like, you're never going to catch me at the bar. Like, if you want to go out with the girls, you can go out, but I'm not going to be there. And then they're like, "Oh, okay, like, that's cool too." And they get that kind of like half smile down, and you're like, yeah, like, this is not going to work out, have a great day. Conversely, in this, though, I've also seen what happens to people, who grow up so restricted that they go crazy once they get a little bit of freedom as well. A couple months back, the big trend on social media was the how it started versus how it's going. And some of those were, like, shocking to me. I was like, man, y'all are wild. Like, some of y'all's how it started, I'm not going to tell you this, but like some of y'all's how it started looked a lot better than how it's going now. And I'll admit it. Listen, man, I got a couple of tats now. If you want to sell me some money, I'll go out and get a couple more. I got some ideas in mind. I have no shame in saying that Wayne is my favorite artist of all time. It's funny because people look at me and they're like, you wouldn't think this guy rides down the street bumping Lil Wayne literally as loud as it can go. I mean, I pull up beside all the white country folks in the pickup trucks at Myrtle Beach, and I got Lil Wayne just blasting through the speakers of the Nissan, and they're like, "Who is this guy? He does not belong here." And I probably have more close female friends than I do male friends now. Like, if you scroll down my contacts list, you'll probably see, much more female names than you will guys. So the point is, while alcohol is still not for me, I found out that holiness is not just eliminating gray areas of Christianity. It's not just a list of things you don't do. I've firmly believed that my relationship with Christ has grown as I've learned how to develop my own identity in Him, my own personality, my lifestyle in Him, both in and outside of the church. I think I do a much better job nowadays of seeing Jesus as that loving Savior, seeing Him as my brother, seeing God as my Father, rather than, looking at them as, spiritual quality controllers of my life. So I said all that to say this again, just a little bit more background information. I struggle a little bit now with, kind of the hate for sin part. It's easy for me, admittedly, to address, things that I disagree with, things like, racism and political and religious elite and sins of that nature. But it is a little bit more difficult for me, especially around my younger friends or my friends that I know struggle with more, I guess, sensitive topics, for lack of a better phrase or terminology there, such as homosexuality, abortion, premarital sex, things like that. I struggle a little bit more with that nowadays. And I'll humbly admit it to you guys, part of it's fear-based, and I'm trying to overcome it. I'm afraid of, my condemnation of sin, turning someone off from Jesus. Once I become passionate about something, I can push, and I'll push people hard. Ask anybody that's ever worked for me before. I will love you to death, but I'll also push you extremely hard, maybe even too hard sometimes. And I'm afraid of pushing people too far. I'm afraid of pushing people away, most importantly, from Jesus. And I don't want to lose, my friends or these people that I hold dear to me either. And I'm ashamed of the way that I pushed some people growing up, guys. I really am. Growing up, I paraded around the fact that I was a Christian and that I was not as sinful as others, that I was a good guy. And I can't imagine, through my hypocrisy and through the way that I addressed sin in an unhealthy way, both in my life and in the lives of others growing up, the way that may have given some people a false perception of Jesus and Christianity. So if you're reading this and this applies to you, again, I sincerely apologize if you're watching the video and you're like, man, I'm trying to figure out that guy's changed a little bit. I promise you I have. Just continue to show me some grace as I change, as I grow in this walk with Christ. But, here comes the but. None of this also excuses me from failing to address sin now. I get to a point where I become in the wrong if I fail to address sin now. People love to quote John 8:7 here. Even those who don't know anything about the Bible or Jesus quote John 8:7 in terms of not throwing stones at people. But those also people seem to conveniently forget, probably out of their ignorance of not knowing, that Jesus also told the same promiscuous woman 4 verses later in verse 11 to go now and leave your life of sin. So while Jesus was quick to condemn, it was quick not to condemn the woman and to chastise those who did condemn her, he also made it abundantly clear to her that her lifestyle needed some correcting. So, said all that to say this. Long introduction, I know. We have to get to the point, guys, where we hate the sin as much as we love the sinner. I know that's an unpopular opinion, especially probably amongst my younger and more liberal friends out there, but it's the truth. Bear with me here while I try to provide some explanation and some clarity and some context. Paul, the greatest writer of probably the entire Bible, stressed grace and salvation through faith more than anyone else who wrote Scripture. Paul as well, though, and I think I've quoted this verse back in one of my other videos, also said in Galatians 6:1 that it was the job of us spiritual people, Christians, spiritual people, to restore those who are caught in sin gently. And I've learned, and we all have to get to a point where we learn that showing grace to people is not just loving them through their sin. Don't get me wrong, that's a huge part of it. Now, again, we're going to talk about that next week. But it's also holding people accountable for it so that they may find freedom from their sin. Let me hit you with some hard truth here real quick. You can hold someone accountable without victim blaming. You can hold someone accountable without slut shaming. You can hold someone accountable without being a judgmental, hypocritical bigot. While I appreciate this heightened sense of sensitivity and understanding that we have in society today, I also fear that we have become so worried, again, myself included, about being negatively viewed or labeled as a Christian that we have allowed people to continually hurt themselves in sinful ways. And I just think that, listen, we have to be able to love someone, advocate for them, fight for justice, do every single thing that we can for some of our friends who have been hurt, who have been wronged, that have been victims of injustice, we have to be able to do that while also lovingly telling them, hey, you also need to grow up some. You need to take some more personal responsibility. And here's a big one. You might want to do a better job of not putting yourself in potentially harmful situations. Again, not that the fact that you do that is an invitation for yourself to be hurt, not that you are not a victim or don't deserve justice. Again, if something bad happens to you, if someone takes advantage of you, however, you also have to grow up and get to the point of, again, taking more personal responsibility and making smarter decisions. I'll ask my Christian friends this: how much do we really love someone if we allow them to continue to live a lifestyle that's detrimental to their physical health, their spiritual health, mental, emotional health? Again, when I say that we must hate the sin as much as we love the sinner, I'm not saying that every time we see one of our gay friends or our promiscuous friends or our atheist friends or our alcohol and party obsessed friends, we have to tell them that they're going to hell and the lifestyle they're living is wrong because now you're just being a jerk and that's not going to help anybody. But they do need to know where you stand. And most importantly, if you don't take anything else away from this, take this: your lifestyle has to reflect that there is something greater to be found in Jesus. Part of hating the sin is also hating your own sin. Hating someone else's sin but not your own is hypocrisy. They need to see the brokenness that sin causes you in your life. They need to see you actively working to better yourself and to address your own sin. They need to see you confessing your sin to others. And again, when you do this in a loving way, when you set that example, I think most people are going to be much more receptive to, the advice that you give them or, the come to Jesus moment that you have with them. So in conclusion here, we're all called to fight this battle against, Satan, ourselves, our own flesh and sin, and we're called to do it together. Our hate of sin must be rooted in the love of Christ, guys. People can tell the difference, I promise. People can tell the difference between you lovingly correcting them and trying to help and, being a selfless, compassionate friend versus judging them to avoid looking in the mirror yourself. And we're going to talk a lot about that next week. So next week, here in part 2, we're going to talk about the love the sinner part and why I feel that we're called to, continue to love the sinner, to fight for equal rights, to fight for fair treatment for people, even if, they don't believe like we do. Even if their lifestyle, may go against some of our beliefs, I still feel that, we're called to, again, to fight for, acceptance and equality. And I believe that we can both do that and still, express our opinion and our disapproval, with sin in its entirety. So we're going to talk a lot about that next week. So if you guys are mad at me this week, come back next week while I make the other half of you guys mad. So again, thank you guys for watching today. Let's all live this lifestyle, the very best that we can. Let's all remember every day that we're all broken sinners and in need of grace. And let's show that grace to the same people, both in love and in, hopefully helping people find the same freedom that we have in Jesus. So again, love you guys. Thank you. Stay safe out there. Keep wearing your mask. I know we're fatigued with it, but please keep wearing your mask. Let's keep each other safe. And I'll see you guys again next Thursday.